Welcome to this episode of Homebow Workshop. Today we're going to make a one-string diddly bow out of a crayon box. Check it out. With all my parts gathered up, let's get started and get this thing built. I'm going to use this scrap of white oak for the neck. So this piece of oak still has a raw weathered edge on there. I want to remove that. I don't want to run it on the joiner because I want to keep this side exactly parallel to the other side. So a little tip on the table saw, if you want to remove just a sliver, is to line your piece up with the blade, bring your fence in, and give it a little bit of pressure so that it deflects the blade just a little bit. Then when you remove your piece, the blade will spring back, and now you can make your cut, and it's just going to graze the side of the board. Nice and clean. For the fretboard, I'm going to use what I believe is a piece of leopard wood. I'll resaw it and then run it through my drum sander to get it nice and flat. Now I'll just mark out where I want to cut a slot for the nut. Now instead of a traditional bone nut or something like that, I'm just going to use a piece of fret wire for the nut. Since this is going to be fretless, all I really need is something to hold the strings up off the fretboard. So this is going to work just fine. To cut that little slot, I'm going to use this homemade jig. Now I've used this before in a few videos, but a couple people have asked to see it just a little bit closer. Now this is nothing special at all. It's just a few pieces of plywood crudely glued together. I've got a guide on the bottom that's exactly 90 degrees to this side. So that way it can register against the side of a fretboard. Now when I use this jig, it's very important that I use a fretboard that's not tapered in any way because I need everything to be square to the fretboard. There's a slot in the side with some magnets embedded in this end. Now what that'll do is it will hold on to the side of my saw and it'll keep everything aligned at 90 degrees up and down. And the slot is just to allow for these brass knobs which secure this plexiglass or Lexan guide. This is the depth stop for the saw. So you set this at the depth of the tang on your fret wire, you'll line that up, and you'll be able to make your cuts. So now I'll just take my guide. Once I have my fretboard oriented correctly, I do have this set up for me being left-handed. I've got a little handle here which helps me hold that thing square against the fretboard. Done. Now I'll just glue the fretboard onto the neck blank. This has got to be the simplest neck build I've ever done. Now I'll just let this dry for a while and move on to the body. I'll start out by putting some tape on the sides. This will give me something to make some marks and measurements on. Now I'll use a center finding ruler to find the center of this little box. Center finding ruler makes it really easy to make markings. Now based on my center line, I'm just marking out for the size of the neck so that I can cut some notches in the box. Always remember, anytime you're using a cutoff wheel like this, it's really important to wear safety glasses. One wrong move and this disc can explode, sending those fragments everywhere, and you don't want one in your eye. Making this notch definitely left the edges of the metal ragged and sharp. So I switched to a little sanding drum in the Dremel and cleaned that up real quick. By now the glue's dry, so I can unclamp the neck and check my fit. It's just a little bit off, doesn't quite fit in there. I think we can fix that with a file. Aha, there it is. Now using a hand plane, I'm just going to make a small shim that'll make up the heel portion of the neck. This block will build up the portion of the neck that sits inside the box. The block is glued on, everything's in place. Now we need to do some shaping on the neck. Now there's a ton of options for doing the shaping. You've seen me several times shape necks with a spoke shave and rasps. As long as the shape on this neck is smooth and comfortable, the exact shape I'm not all that concerned with. So for that reason, I'm going to jump straight into the belt sander and shape away. I ended up switching back to my rasps and files. Although the belt sander is really efficient at removing material, I just didn't have the control to remove the material exactly where I wanted to like I do when I'm using a rasp or a file. So I ended up just finishing it up using a rasp. Woo. Now I'll drill the hole for the tuner. Again, since there's one tuner, this is probably the fastest I've ever done this. For this one, I'm using a stepped drill bit. The thinner portion drills all the way through the front, while this larger stepped portion makes room for the tuner body. To do this with two separate drill bits is a pain in the butt, and this drill bit, in my opinion, is worth the money. And now just a couple more quick holes to drill. This time these are for the top and the bottom string ferrules. So we are just cruising along on this project. I probably shouldn't say it, but everything is going pretty smooth so far. I'm going to use this guitar finishing oil again, get a couple of coats applied, and we'll be good. Ooh, that looks pretty cool. Let's get this thing wrapped up. All I need to do are install the string ferrules and the tuner. I like it. This is going to be cool. Now I'll just put the neck in the box. I'll secure it with a couple of small screws right into the back. I don't feel that there's any need for any grommets or any kind of support plate or anything. And I know I've mentioned it before as well, but don't grab your impact driver and just drive these screws home. Most likely you'll end up snapping them off, especially if you don't lubricate the threads. I always recommend the first time driving the screw in, definitely do it by hand. Now the only thing missing is a string, which I happen to have right here. I've got this little tiny bridge that I made a while back for a cigar box guitar I was experimenting on. I think, maybe I just pop that in there. It's gonna work. That bridge doesn't work so well. We're gonna have to make something a little different. Alright, so let's try this crazy thing out. What do we got to tune to? What is that? Drop H? Is that not the coolest thing? I really like this. This thing is going to be really fun to just mess around with. I do have this set up with the tuner oriented for a right-handed player, but obviously one string, no frets. It really doesn't make any difference how you play it, where you tune it. Now obviously if you wanted to build one of these, you could take it about as far as you wanted to. You could add frets, you could radius the fretboard, you could add pickups, all kinds of stuff. The sky is the limit as far as you want to go. It's up to you. You really don't even need any kind of a box or a tin or anything. You could really just take a stick and put a bolt in there and a bolt up here and put a string on it. Boom! You got yourself a diddly bow. Use your imagination and you can come up with some really neat stuff. So be sure to leave me a comment and let me know what you thought of this project. Also in the video description you'll find links to my website, social media, all that kind of stuff. So thanks for stopping by and checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, thanks a lot for watching. This thing's cool. This little thing's fun. Boom! Drill. You gotta get you one.